Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session on transport-led development in the north of England. I'm your host, Matt. I'm an associate in WSP's Freight and Logistics team, which is a section of their transport planning function. I'm also the co-chair of the CILT's Northwest Committee and the ITS UK's Freight Forum. We've got a couple of presentations today, and I'm going to ask Mark and Rochelle to introduce themselves. So, Mark, if you'd like to go first.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mark Jackson, and I'm Head of Transport and Contract Services at Durham County Council. But I've also spent a number of years, over the last 20-odd years, working at both Newcastle City Council and Sunderland City Council.
Thanks, Mark. And Rochelle.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rochelle Forsyth-Ward. I'm Head of Transport Policy and Strategy at the North East Combined Authority.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rochelle. Just a bit of housekeeping. If you do have any questions, there is a Q&A function in the on the ribbon at the bottom of your screen. So if you can post whatever you want to ask in there. Failing that, if you do want to come off mute, please feel free to do so and interject. But if you can, in the first instance, use the Q&A function. And yeah, I think if you need to dive off and take a phone call or whatever you need to do, again, if you can just stay muted and keep your camera off. So with no further ado, I think we'll start the presentations. Rochelle, if you'd like to go first, please.
Thank you. I'll just share the screen. Okay. Can you see that all right, Matt?
Yep. See
Brilliant.
that full screen. Thank you.
Thank you. So, hi everyone. I just want to talk you through the North East Local Transport Plan, which we're developing at the moment. So, I mentioned that I work for the North East Combined Authority. For those of you that aren't aware, the North East Combined Authority is still a fairly new organisation. It was just formed on the 7th of May this year. And you can see on the map there the area that we cover. So that's Durham, Northumberland and Tyne and Wear. And we've got a mayor. So Kim McGuinness was elected as the mayor of the Combined Authority on the 7th of May. And we've got a devolution deal with government, and that's what hands powers and funding to the region from government. So those powers and funding offer transport, skills, housing and regeneration. And there's a commitment in that devolution deal to refresh the local transport plan, or LTP, for the region. And the last LTP for the North East was published back in March of 2021. So it's definitely time for a bit of a refresh. And the Combined Authority has a vision. So everything we're doing for the Combined Authority is to deliver that vision. And you can see that on your screen there now. Our purpose is to champion the full potential of our region. Collaborating with our partners and local authorities, we'll create a better way of life by connecting communities, giving people the skills to succeed, and improving well-being for all, so that the North East is recognised as an outstanding place to live, work, visit and invest. So that's given you a bit of an introduction to the Combined Authority. So now I want to move on and talk to you about the local transport plan itself. So as you might already know, the local transport plan is a statutory plan. It's a statutory requirement for us to produce an LTP. And it's that plan that sets out in strategic terms what the Mayor aims to achieve through transport provision and why she wants to achieve that. It's accompanied by a delivery plan. So that delivery plan contains a list of schemes that we will build, introduce and change up to 2040, which is the lifetime of this plan. The plan's got an aim, and that is to create a green integrated transport network that works for all. And it covers the movement of both people and freight. And we have a message at the Combined Authority that making journeys is good, and that's because it benefits our economy. By getting people and freight moving around the region, they're spending money, so the economy improves. But greener journeys are even better because they also benefit the environment and health of our region and our people. And then I just want to mention that an integrated sustainability appraisal, so an ISA, is being carried out. And that's a technical assessment which evaluates the impact of that local transport plan and the delivery plan on factors such as environment, health, and inclusion. And we're developing our plan and delivery plan with our 7 local authorities in the North East, and we're working very closely with one another on the development of this. So now I just want to move on to talk about where we want to be. So I've mentioned that the plan's got a vision, and that's to create a green integrated transport network that works for all. And we've got an ambitious set of service standards that'll help us achieve that aim. Now, those service standards come under 5 key focus areas. So first one, which you can see in bold there, is planning journeys, informing users, and supporting customers. So where we want to be with that one is that we want information, including live journey information, to be easy to find and accessible to everybody. Then we've got ticketing and fares. So for this one, we'd like to be in a position where travelling around the region is simple, affordable, and easy to use. People should be able to travel across the North East on a different range of different transport types without having to buy multiple tickets. So that's where we'd like to get to. Then we've got reach and resilience of infrastructure. So we'd like to get to a position where transport network extends to all areas of the North East, including our remote rural areas and our coastal areas. And we want it to be capable of dealing with extreme weather changes, such as flash flooding. And then the 4th point, which is really important to our mayor, is safety, especially of women, girls, and other vulnerable groups. So we want everybody to feel safe when using public transport and travelling around the North East. And that's what we'll be working very hard to achieve. And then the next one is connections between different transport types. So this is about making sure that it's easier to switch between different transport types, but also easier to switch from one operator to another operator as well. We'd like to see timetables being joined up so that people don't have to wait long periods of time before making the next part of their journey. Okay, so now I just want to talk briefly about the challenges. So I've set out what we're wanting to achieve, and by delivering that and achieving the LTP's aim, we will address transport challenges that are currently being experienced in the North East at the moment. And we've identified these challenges through market research that we've done with members of the public over the last few years. So people have told us that the challenges that they frequently experience when travelling around the North East are access to and quality of information. It's a complexity of ticketing and the cost of fares, which they perceive to be too expensive. Then there's gaps in the transport network. So that's about the transport network not reaching all parts of the North East. Then we've got resilience issues on some parts of the network. So as I mentioned previously, that's dealing with extreme weather events, but it's also pinch points on the network as well, which lead to congestion and unreliable journey times. Then we've got actual and perceived safety concerns. Then we've got low perceptions of service quality. And then we've got connections between different transport types as a barrier. So people have told us that they don't feel able to use multiple forms of transport for one journey when travelling around the North East. So if we get to where we want to be and we deliver the aim of the LTP, then we'll be able to support the delivery of the North East Combined Authorities vision and commitments. I've popped those on the screen there. So the commitments are a fairer North East, a greener North East, a connected North East, an international North East, and a successful North East. So now I just want to talk a little bit about how we'll get there, and that's through our delivery plan. So as I mentioned earlier, the local transport plan is accompanied by a delivery plan, and it's that delivery plan that sets out all the actions that will be taken to 2040 to deliver that local transport plan and achieve our aim. In the delivery plan, we highlight the powers and the delivery mechanisms the Combined Authority now has, such as bus reform powers, which are a tool to make improvements happen. And that delivery plan includes a range of interventions which are all costed and set against potential funding options. So it sets out what we want to deliver and when we'd like to deliver that. And that's all subject to funding and powers. And you can see on the screen there, the time periods that the delivery plan split into. So that's up to 2027, then 2028 to 2032, and then the final period is 2033 to 2040. And that delivery plan is maintained as a live programme, so that will constantly change. So as schemes are identified, they'll be added to that programme, and then as schemes are delivered, they'll be removed from that programme because obviously they've entered delivery. And I've just popped on the right hand side there an example of some of the improvements that the delivery plan is aiming to deliver. So I just want to make you aware that we will be going out to public consultation on the local transport plan and the delivery plan very, very soon. The Mayor would really like to hear from as many people as possible as part of this consultation. And we're going to listen to all the feedback that we received during the consultation, and hopefully there'll be a lot of it, and we'll amend the documents as appropriate. And once the consultation launches, there'll be details on our website, and I've popped our website address on the screen there for you as well. But if you'd like me to make you aware of the consultation launch once it's gone live, I'm more than happy to do that. I've popped my email address on the last slide, so just send me an email after this meeting, and then once consultation goes live, I'll drop you a line to let you know, and I'll send you links to all of the consultation materials. Sorry, it's green. It doesn't want to move on to the next slide.
Been a little bit slow today.
It is a bit, isn't it? So, final thing I want to make you aware of is the timescales that we're working towards. So I mentioned that the consultation will be launching imminently. And then early next year, we're going to go through all that feedback that we've received, and we'll amend the LTP accordingly. We'll then take it to the Mayor to finalise the LTP and get her approval to take it on to Cabinet. If the Mayor grants us approval, we'll go to Cabinet in March 2025, where we'll present them with a post-consultation version of the document and the delivery plan, and a short summary document as well. And we'll ask them to approve that and grant permission to publish. And then just want to say thank you so much for listening. I'm happy to take any questions. And as I mentioned, my email address is just on the screen there as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Rochelle. Thank you very much. Some really good points in there. Out to the wider audience, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask Rochelle at this point? Nothing in the chat or the Q&A. I think, Rochelle, just a couple of questions from me. In terms of, you mentioned the perception of value for money. So is that? I'm interested to know how you create that. Change the perception. How would you go about changing that perception? And is that through seamless ticketing, which I know you're looking at? Is that through better connectivity with rural areas? How is that kind of being addressed in the LTP?
Okay, so there's a number of ways we are looking to address that. So firstly, we're looking at fares for young people. So what we'd like to introduce is free travel for all under 18s. Obviously, this is all subject to funding and powers. We're also looking at more integrated ticketing products, so people don't have to pay for multiple journeys. They can buy that one ticket product and then they can use that for their entire journey. We're also looking at what we can do to reduce the price of fares, because I appreciate that's very expensive at the moment. We've done a lot of work through our BSIP funding to reduce the bus fares in the region. So we are exploring that as well.
Brilliant. Cheers, I suppose the last one, I suppose this is for everybody who's waiting the hotly anticipated budget on the 30th of October. Is your funding ring fenced? Is it subject to budgetary changes, etc., etc.? Or are you confident that what you've set out you'll be able to kind of deliver in the short to medium term?
Okay, so this is all subject to funding. So there are a couple of things in the delivery plan that we have already been guaranteed funding for. So a couple of things in there, but the rest we will have to see what happens with the budget later this month. Yeah.
Brilliant. Cheers, Rochelle. Thank you. Mark?
Just to add on to that answer that Rochelle gave there, obviously, and again, I'm not covering this in my presentation, but Durham originally wasn't going to be part of the North East Combined Authority. It had the opportunity of potentially getting a county deal, so we weren't sitting around the table having discussions. So actually, from a Durham point of view, for the next 2 years, actually the money that's come through City Regional Sustainable Transport funding, as an example, we don't get any transport funding for the next 2 years. Through the Network North announcements that the previous government obviously made just before announcing the election, to make up for the fact we weren't getting any money for those 2 years. Obviously, they said that there was two schemes. Actually, there was a Ferry Hill Rail scheme that they offered the money through to delivery subject to business case, and also they said that we would get £72.8 million to deliver our transport schemes for the next 2 years. And again, at this moment in time, obviously that was Network North money from High Speed Rail. It was going to be borrowed, obviously in the next decade rather than this decade. So we do really need some clarity on that as well, because at this moment in time, to deliver our schemes, we currently don't have any money to do that for the next till March 2027.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Rochelle, thank you very much. Mark, segue nicely into your presentation, please.
Thank you very much, Matt. And I'll just hopefully share my screen as Rochelle did. If you can just let me know when it appears.
That's come up. It's not in full screen mode just yet.
Not yet. Okay, from beginning. Is that it there?
Brilliant, yeah.
Okay, and hopefully it will obviously spin through the slides as quickly as I need them to spin through. Obviously, first thing I would just like to say, and people can think about this through the presentation, the whole transport-led development in the north of England. I think people in transport always think transport is the most important thing. But actually, I do prefer it's transport enables rather than transport led. Obviously, some of the funding mechanisms, and I'll cover this off, have historically not been transport led, especially when you look at things like the SRN and investment into those where the money that's being made available is there to solve a problem that exists on the network now, not to preempt a problem that might exist as development comes forward. So that's just for people to think about. But I'm going to go through obviously background to Durham, what the Durham Capital Programme is, some of the decisions to support network and partnerships that we have, some of the challenges and opportunities that we have, and then also some of our approaches. So again, in terms of delivering transport interventions that are required for development, obviously there's a very standard, through the planning process, there's an identification of need. It's how we've done through Section 106, Section 278 contributions, but obviously then we've been able to access grants via government funding streams to deliver things like the housing infrastructure funded projects and other schemes like Future High Street Fund, which has been good and a positive change because that is allowing us to do things in advance. But actually then Durham has moved on to actually now focusing the transport investment around what is our inclusive economic strategy, which is a different approach, which, as I say, it's about enabling that economic and social growth that we need to enable opportunity. And that's focused primarily on innovation. Just about Durham, it is a large place, over 500,000 residents, largest authority in the North East Combined Authority, 862 square miles, 53 miles of motorway, and primarily our main transport infrastructure, which impacts the national network, are the A66, which links the M6 across to the A1 and then all the way through to Teesside. The A19, obviously, which is a north-south link closer to the coast, and then the A1 M, which obviously links up more centrally through the region. And then also we've got the East Coast Main Line as the main, obviously, rail link through the region, and Durham Coastline, which links Teesside again up through Sunderland, through Durham, and then around and into Newcastle. And also we do have, whilst only one of them is in the Necker area, we'll have Newcastle Airport, and then just to the south of the border with Durham, we also have Teesside International Airport. So, as I say, it's a complex place. It's not just one city. It's not focused on one particular place. There's 12 settlements, major settlements on top of Durham City, which is Durham City people may know it's a World Heritage Site. It's got a lot of historical issues to resolve, but then we'll link across from a heritage coast on the eastern side, and then all the way across through Stanhope and Barnet Castle to the Durham Dales and the Pennines. Obviously, so there's a huge rural environments. Obviously, the demands of the places are considerably different, and Rochelle just mentioned things like bus connectivity. Is incredibly important to the people of to the people of Durham, because we can't fill that gap with things like rail at this moment in time. Just in terms of where we fit into the North East Combined Authority, as I say, we're 26% of the residents. Our annual budget as a council is about 1.3 billion. But obviously, in terms of the economy, it's about 10.7 billion is generated within Durham, 22% of Necker, who have 261,000 workers who all need, well, not all of them, some of them will be working from home these days, but obviously we need to get them to work and get them to access opportunities. We've got high-skilled workers as well, making a big proportion of them. And obviously a number of different jobs, and a high number of businesses, in terms of 14,500 based in the county. Primarily focused, we obviously always, people have talked about coal mining, steelworks and concert and things, obviously, but we still have a huge manufacturing sector. We also are entering the space sector, which is obviously very exciting as well, linking through with obviously Durham University. We've got the fintech sector in terms of companies like Atom Bank, which obviously was founded and set up in Durham. And then we've got some really high performing university linked green economy companies such as Low Carbon Materials, who actually were up for one of the Earthshot prizes. So there's lots of excitement, an opportunity that's taking place within the region. Obviously, one of the big issues that we're all currently looking at is how we deliver the plan. We have a County Durham plan, which was adopted in 2020. I'm not going to go through the detail of that, but obviously I'll just mention there's 300 hectares of new land to be developed for business, and approximately 24,500 new homes to be delivered by 2035. And that was until the new government obviously came along. Obviously, in terms of the NPPF consultation that's going on, and the commitment to deliver an additional 1.5 million to deliver 1.5 million homes over the next 5 years. If you look at our figures, it goes up from 1,300 to nearly 2,200. It's 69% increase. So in terms of how we facilitate that with transport interventions in a world where actually the economic return on some of our sites, the price you'll get for houses and things like that, obviously it's not the most straightforward thing to do, and we do expect some challenges with that, and we will be reviewing our plan in line with the outcome of the NPPF over the next 2 or 3 years. And I'm sure you'll all be working through problems like that, just understanding what government's new policies, proposals are going to be. A lot of it might be driven by the autumn statement, obviously in a couple of weeks' time, although I think everybody's just expecting the autumn statement to be sort of about the next year or so. It's not going to be longer fiscal sort of proposition. I think that will come out next year rather than this year, is what people seem to be suggesting. So our capital programme, our in-year capital programme for the council is 170 million in transport. This year we've got over 50 million pounds of schemes that we're delivering. We are also supporting schemes which are being led by corporate property and land, economic development, planning and housing, and then also culture, sport and tourism. We'll work across directorate, which has 2 S's in, utilising a programme and project management framework, just to obviously try and give us the foresight into where problems may be occurring, and actually helps escalate any of those issues as they are encountered. And obviously, in terms of the capital programme, as we move forward, we're anticipating that will remain high, despite what I mentioned about the 72 million. We hope we will get a positive outcome to a value anyway from the autumn statement. So we do envisage we will continuously be spending over £50 million per year in a transport-related field for at least the next 3 or 4 years. And obviously in the future, we do anticipate there'll be a single transport settlement for the North East, and that should provide some benefits. I'd say that the capital programme is not just about transport schemes. It includes all infrastructure requirements. We'll all have challenges in terms of sites that we're trying to deliver, in terms of things like the national grid and the power that's available to those sites to enable them to take place. As obviously we all know our standard sort of issues around capacity and network impacts. Obviously we are looking at how we can improve public transport and active travel links, which Rochelle just mentioned. And actually a lot of that is going to be highly revenue intensive, which again is going to obviously be subject to any budgetary announcements, because again, I think we all have to, to recognise the fact that whilst we have a big budget each year in terms of 1.3 billion over the next 4 years, we've got to save another 64 million. And that figure doesn't ever appear to be going down. It seems to be going up every time there's a review in terms of people looking at funding. And the way we're delivering obviously is now through partnerships with people like Homes England through the HIF proposition. We are delivering schemes with the National Highways in terms of contributions to the upgrades of junctions on the A19 and providing active travel links across. We are working with Northern Power Grid as best we possibly can to ensure that their upgrades are aligned with our development plans. National Grid isn't so much of a problem in Durham, but it has been in the North East, specifically around Nissan, and about some of the power that's required for the new battery plant at Nissan and some of the intensive energy uses there. And obviously we've got great partnerships, as I say, with both the DfT, with the North East Combined Authority, but also Durham. We do border directly onto Yorkshire and North Yorkshire, and also Tees Valley Combined Authorities. So we obviously have to, we also link closely in with them as well. Just in terms of what we have delivered, things like funded through the Transforming Cities Fund, we've delivered a new bus station in Durham, some improvements in terms of active travel schemes around the city centre to encourage more walking and cycling. That's the same for on the A167 at Newton Aycliffe. Again, I'll not go into the detail of these because they'll obviously be very localised, but obviously people can have a look at them when we circulate the slides, and you can obviously just, if you need ask any questions on them, just ask any questions. And obviously things like improving pedestrian cycling route on some of our busier roads as well, just to get people across, things like the A690 dual carriageway at West Rain, which has a new housing site developed right next to it. So in terms of delivery in 23-24, there's 70 million transport projects on the ground, including extension to our park and ride sites, again, which is just reducing the need for cars to get into the city centre, improving access from those sites through active travel modes, again, linking primarily to and from the city centre and working away from the city centre. We've had several £1 million through Housing Infrastructure Fund in Newton Aycliffe, which has resulted in improvements. Again, this is in advance of the development. So what I said before about waiting for a problem to be caused and then intervening, obviously the infrastructure enabling projects through HIF have been incredibly useful. And again, we understand through Homes England that the funding mechanism, instead of councils benefiting from the Section 106 contributions, they're going to have more of a recycled fund, which should hopefully generate more money for schemes going forward. Working on the A19, we've done some big museum expansions in terms of the the Locomotion Railway Museum, which again, if you've never been, I would recommend going. It's obviously where one of the first railway lines in the world. And also there's a big investment of almost £250 million in Bishop Auckland through the implementation of a new day park, and probably about 1.5 million new visitors going to Bishop Auckland over the next few years. We're looking at bypasses to obviously remove some of the traffic off the A68 away from some of the residential areas. We're looking at a new access road, which will take some of the pressures away from Bishop Auckland. And also looking at some capacity enhancements, because, as I say, all of that development, which is going to put pressure on the existing network. Schemes are nearing completion, and a big scheme nearing completion on the A19 is Jade Enterprise Zone, which actually, by doing the work with National Highways on that, has facilitated a huge expansion of one of our prime employment sites, but also facilitated through Seaton Lane the delivery of over 3,000 houses in both Sunderland and in Durham. We do have rail ambitions as well. Leamside Line is incredibly important for the North East. It runs parallel to part of the East Coast Main Line. It can give capacity improvements, a very expensive scheme. Rochelle referred to part of it through getting Metro to Sunderland and Washington. But we also would like to see 2 trains per hour stopping at Chesley Street, 2 trains per hour at Seaman Horden, better spread of services across the hour with Durham, because at the minute they don't necessarily come at a reasonable spaced interval. And then also, as I mentioned before, we did get the money provided to us through the Network North announcement for Ferryhill and Sedgefield stations, but we're just waiting for an announcement from government on that. So why are we doing so well in terms of what we're bidding for? Well, obviously, we've got a lot of strength in the region. We're part of the North East Combined Authority. We've been very successful with a wide range of funding bids, partly because we've got some great examples of partnership working, whether that's with the private sector through delivery of places like Integres 61 on the A1, or working with the Auckland project in Bishop Auckland. As I say, we have great relationships with National Highways. Again, in the region, not just in Durham, they've delivered some huge interventions over the last few years at Tesco's in South Tyneside, Downhill Lane in Sunderland, and the Coast Road in North Tyneside, which has actually improved journey times in these huge congestion hotspots across the A19, which is allowing better access to some of our major employers like Nissan. I've mentioned the Homes England scheme at Seaton Lane, but also we've got that history of delivery. We are delivering the schemes that we've said we're going to deliver. And we've got a history of making brave decisions and preempting the problems. I'm just going to jump forward 2 slides. One of the decisions that was made by Sunderland City Council while it goes to again, working through a deal that they entered into with government for Sunderland and South Tyneside was they got funding for the Northern Spire Bridge, which is what's shown in the bottom right-hand corner of this slide, which basically opened a new access into the Sunderland City, which opened the South Bank, riverbank up to development. That was all pretty much focused on access into the river through shipbuilding. Didn't have very good road access because obviously you didn't really need to transport boats by road ever. But we made the decision as a council to obviously go with Northern Spire Bridge. That has then opened up access to a huge swathe of development opportunity, which has resulted in the announcement of the £450 million North East Film and TV studio at Crown Works being taken forward. Obviously, the opportunities as well as we move forward, we do anticipate longer funding settlements, so we can better programme across the North East. It's not just Durham trying to deliver as much as it can, as quickly as it can. It's delivering the right schemes at the right times. We're going to align with government policy. We're just trying to understand exactly what that government policy is going to be and what they expect us to be spending our money on, and seeing how we do align. We can see with the longer term funding settlement, we should have much better opportunities in terms of procurement. And also, because we'll have a bit longer, we can get our designs all produced to a much better position because you're not tied into a sort of a 2 or 3 year delivery window, which will obviously then give us better evidence, it'll reduce risks, and then ultimately reduce costs. We do have regional teams being set up and regional assets that will be set up to deliver the pipeline that is included in the local transport plan. And obviously we'll be monitoring that pipeline just to make sure it still remains relevant, and then assessing new opportunities and using our assets as far as we possibly can, whether that's our transport assets or obviously ultimately our people. The North East does have a great workforce available to it. Just finally, I'm just going to go through what we've done now in terms of aligning our transport programme with the Inclusive Economic Strategy, which is the strategy that was adopted last year, running through to 2035. And basically, it is about how we're going to deliver our local plan, and it's identified all of our employment sites. It's just outlining what is in the local plan. It shows how we've attracted major investment like Hitachi Rail, like GlaxoSmithKline, like Amazon in terms of Integrate 21 and Adam Bank, and obviously also where we've secured additional government funding, including £20 million for Spennymoor, 25 million through the Towns and Villages programme, 20 million for NetPark and Durham Innovation District, and also, as I mentioned before, the money that's up in the air, the 73 million from the Government Local Transport Fund. It's focused on what we're calling the 5 Ps: people, productivity, places, and promotion, but also having underlying it all the planet. And it's obviously looking at these priorities in terms of skills, barriers to employment, like transport, physical connectivity again, which is in place, promotion again, which links into some of our transport ticketing offers again that Rochelle mentioned, and then obviously it is setting out a really clearly articulated future vision and delivery strategy to deliver all of that. And part of that has resulted in the production of the Durham Investment Framework and the Investment Pitch Book, which was launched by Kim McGuinness, the Mayor, at UK Reef this year, which obviously focuses on all of the investment opportunities across the county. And there are major investment opportunities. There is potential to work with multiple partners. And again, I'm not going to go through these in detail because people can have a look at them and ask me any questions afterwards if they want to. And it's underpinned by an investment framework that provides for a matrix of assessing the strategic impact of those sites, and also the investment readiness. So hopefully it'll allow us to better prioritise where the investments go within Durham, and hopefully, if it's adopted wider across the northeast, obviously across the northeast. We're also investing in the city. Again, obviously, Durham City has got an international name. It is a World Heritage Site. It is a gateway into the county. It does have a mainline railway station. It's got excellent road connectivity with the A1. Also, and there's a huge amount of development linking in for both the university with some of our council sites, some of the other major development sites along the riverbank. And obviously you can see off the it's very constrained, the historic heart of the city on the peninsula, which is obviously a really tight bend in the River Wear, which causes a number of issues in terms of access and also opportunity as to what you can actually do. So finally, just go through some of the strategic sites. I'm not planning on going through these particularly in any detail, which have fit into that investment framework. Agley Heads, which is a new innovation district just to the north of the city centre, really easy access from the railway station. We're starting to put in all of the active travel links into that before that scheme is brought forward. Net Park, again, there is huge investment going in there. We've delivered phases 1 and 2, phase 3A, 3B and 4 in the pipeline with planning permissions in progress, and they'll hit site very, very soon. Jade Park, I mentioned, we've just delivered some huge investment on the A19 there in terms of Jade Business Park. Again, that will continue to grow. And we've had some major success with companies growing from incubator units through to huge now, really internationally renowned and respected companies. Integra 61, we're about to enter into the second phase of that, which will include the delivery of the Bowburn Relief Road, which obviously is, again, is a huge development immediately adjacent to the A1, but also immediately adjacent to the Leamside line. So the Leamside line gives huge opportunities in terms of rail delivery there. Forest Park is just another example with a development partner with financing in place, and obviously just taking forward the full business case and development cost finalisation at this moment in time. And that's what I wanted to cover. So hopefully you've all found that useful.
Mark, that's brilliant. You've got a lot going on.
Yes.
Just go to the Q&A. Ben Walsh put, I agree with Mark Jackson in that he says that public transport should be priority. Yeah, I think we can all kind of agree that. Simon Ives, Rochelle mentioned freight in her opening remarks, but neither speaker has provided any specific details, given that the vast majority of deep sea freight in the UK arrives in the southeast. Does Necker have any plans to improve rail freight connectivity and take HGVs off the A1? So I think that's getting at the increasing paths and capacities for rail freight, which I think you briefly covered. But again, I'll hand over to Mark.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, Rochelle, if you want to come in, obviously feel free. I know it's probably more a regional wide issue, but obviously we are, as we mentioned, obviously one of the main constraints on the rail network through up the eastern side of the country, but obviously it impacts directly on the northeast, is obviously the capacity of the East Coast Main Line, and obviously the mix of slower trains with the faster and the high speed passenger trains, which obviously does give capacity constraints, which is why the Leamside line and the reopening of the Leamside line and improving links from Teesside to Tyneside through the Stillington line are really important projects. But obviously everyone appreciates that they're not cheap projects. The steer from government the previous government, to be fair, was you can deliver it out of your new transport funding settlement, but it'll be delivered locally. Well, the scheme is, it's going to be not far off £1 billion, I would imagine. So it's a lot of money when our settlement is, I think, 1.2 billion confirmed and possibly 1.8 billion, which is obviously there's some money which is obviously through the Network North announcements, probably a little bit in a bins, but that would be a huge chunk, which would have massive benefits, obviously, but it wouldn't necessarily allow us to deliver some of the other ambitions because we're a very ambitious region. Yeah. Ports, again, are massively important. There's a lot of investment going into the ports, whether it's the north and south banks of the Port of Tyne, but also across the riverbank in Sunderland. But as I say, there's huge opportunities there. I don't know if Rochelle wants to add anything.
No, I think you've covered it, Mark. Happy with that.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Rochelle. I think just on again, freight and logistics cap on. We've not really touched on freight and logistics kind of alternative fuels and the demand for what would be perceived as electric vehicles, perhaps hydrogen, perhaps something else, interim fuels, biofuels, HVO. Is there any kind of plans for exploring that? And again, with the lots of activity in terms of building manufacturing and warehousing, etc. Is there any plans for introducing alternative fueling hubs or anything like that?
So not in terms of alternative fuel hubs, but what we are doing is obviously we're looking to see what's happening as technology advances. We've got a Northeast ZEV strategy, which we published about a year and a half ago, that deals with this in a bit more detail. But at the moment, it's mainly focused on electric vehicles, just because we feel that the technology is not quite there yet. But we are keeping an eye on what's happening. We are working with the universities to explore opportunities for the future.
Thanks, Rochelle. Mark, have you anything you'd like to add?
I think obviously there's a huge opportunity, I think, for the Northeast, which currently we know Tees Valley has been identified as a hydrogen hub, and obviously they are looking at things like hydrogen-powered trains, you know, and because they had a hydrogen network through the old chemical industry across Teesside. So I think, you know, it would be a real shame if, as those progress, that we don't get either some benefit from what's happening in Tees Valley, or actually, again, we do get approaches from people about alternative fuels. Again, it's quite difficult at this moment in time, and it shouldn't be the case. But obviously, money and what people can invest is incredibly important to them. And some of the differentials, which hopefully things like grant funding could help make the difference between, well, why are you buying another whatever powered bus or whatever powered HGV, when actually if you'd spent another 200,000, you could have had a much cleaner vehicle that could do the same amount of work. And again, it's just proving that technology, which I think it'll probably start happening quickly, but just not quite yet.
Yeah, I think just one for Mark and suppose Rochelle as well. With the upgrade of the A66, the Julian A66, are you expecting more, again, freight and logistics movements? How does that play into your local plans? Are there plans afoot for any investment in lorry parking or any kind of enablers on the spatial planning side of things, working with national highways? Have you got anything like that?
Again, just in terms of the majority of the A66 project, the majority of the A66 project sits out slightly further west than us. It's in North Yorkshire, Yorks, and then obviously ultimately into the new authorities of, I can't remember what they're called, Cumberland and Westfield. Sorry, I can't remember the name of the new
Westmoreland. Yep.
Westmoreland. Yeah. So they are looking at, because we are part of that working group, so they are looking at where things like HGV parking could be put in, because obviously, you know, the A66 currently is used by a heck of a lot of HGVs. It is an important link. If you don't cross the A66, the next real route across is you're up to the A69, which is substantially further north, and potentially you've missed most of the northeast if you come to the northeast, and you'll have missed Teesside. And obviously linking the two coastal, the east and the west coast across the A66 is an important route for those people. That it doesn't have the greatest safety record because of those vehicles, because people get frustrated, but also because of the height of the road as well. It obviously does experience issues with weather and snow and high winds and those sorts of things. So again, the lorry parking is being actively looked at, and I know there's some being looked at sort of around the on the A1 junction with the A66 and around there as well. But I don't think they've all been determined quite as yet. I'm sure that people from those councils will be able to advise on that.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Have you got any more questions in the Q&A? No. I think that's it. Mark, Rochelle, thank you very much. Has anybody got any further comments before we close? No, I think that's it. Thank you all. Hope to speak to you all soon.
Thank you.